Advising people on what PC parts to buy is kind of my job, so welcome and thanks for joining me today as I get down to business. A would-be PC gamer approaches me holding roughly $1,200 cold hard cash. Do I beat them up and take their money? Well, I think about it, but I decide to play the long game and lure them into my confidence first by providing them with this tastefully manicured PC build.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Corsair Xeneon Flex OLED gaming monitor, which can bend from completely flat up to 800R curvature. But there's a lot more to this display, which features an ultra-wide 45-inch 3440 by 1440 panel with a 240 Hz refresh rate and 0.03 millisecond gray-to-gray response time. The spec list also includes NVIDIA G-Sync compatibility, AMD FreeSync Premium certification, Auto HDR with up to 1000 nit brightness, 99% DCI P3 color gamut coverage, a sophisticated burn-in prevention system, and an integrated stand with a range of connectivity. Click the sponsor link in the video description for more on the Corsair Xeneon Flex. A few notes before I get started. February was a bit of a rebuilding month for me, so I didn't get quite as far along with the projects that I had planned. That said, I have lots planned in March, several builds, as well as that how to build a PC series, so make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're not already so you can get informed when those videos go live. Also, this monthly series is about recommending PC parts for people who might be building, so I'm going over a parts list today. If you'd like to see me actually build a system or guide you through one with a tutorial, check out the beginner's guide playlist, which is also linked in the description, along with all of the components that I'm talking about today. But here's my parts list. It's about $1,200 if you'd like a TLDR. That's pretty much it. And again, this is all linked in the video's description. Why am I just doing one system today? Sometimes I recommend 2 builds or 3 builds, but since last month I did sort of a entry-level build and a high-end build, today I'm sort of sticking right in the middle, kind of in the sweet spot. And I'm also going to address the downside of PC building right now, which is that graphics card pricing is still pretty bad, and especially if you're looking for something in the sweet spot right in the middle, your options are somewhat limited. Over on the CPU side of things, we actually have maybe too many options, and companies like AMD and Intel keep launching better CPUs for gaming, such as the 7950X3D CPU that I reviewed last week. However, this costs $700, and if there's been one constant in all of the CPU content that I've done in the past few months, it's that people keep saying, you know what? I sure am glad I bought that 5800X3D when I did. And that's because when it comes to bang for your buck, especially if you're focusing on gaming performance with your PC build, the 5800X3D at about $300 to $330 is really tough to beat. It can hang out and perform alongside the likes of the 12900K and 13900K from Intel, which are much more expensive, as well as CPUs from AMD's AM5 lineup, going from the 7700X all the way up to the 7950X and 7950X3D. It's not necessarily going to be faster than those, but it hangs with them, and it really begs the question, why spend all that extra money on the latest and greatest platform if you can get something that gives you 90 to 90% of that performance for way less cash? Or should I say more cash, since this has 3D cache technology? I've been making a lot of cash jokes lately, so let's go down our list. But not this list here, where everything is just laid out for you with a grand total, but this list here, which has a total that's a lot less money because I've left the GPU out of it for now. Also, I'm featuring a pie chart because pie charts are just awesome, where you can see a breakdown of what percentage of the total amount is spent on which component. Now, please note that a base price of about $800 without a graphics card is a step up from the budget systems that I've been recommending for AM4 in the past month or two. The core components for those systems without a graphics card are going to cost maybe $500 to $600, and then you can drop in a GPU for about $300, giving yourself a nice balanced system for about $900. But the MO for this build was different because we're going with the 5800X3D. This CPU can handle really high-end GPUs without sacrificing much performance, so because of that, I veered a little bit more towards, again, that mid-range price and the total today of $1,200-ish. So first, I'm going to run down the component choices available in here with a few alternatives for you, and then I will focus on GPUs and GPU pricing, where I've also made a chart here sort of listing them for you, so you can take a quick look right now, but I'll get into more detail on this in just a moment. The 5800X3D price can fluctuate somewhat. Look for a price between $300, kind of on the low end, that's about the cheapest I've seen it, to around $330 is a price that you can usually find it pretty easily. $322 is what it's selling for right now directly on Amazon. But do note that the 5800X3D does not ship with a CPU cooler, so you can't rely on a stock cooler like you can with, say, the budget 5600, for example. I have paired it with the Thermalright Silver Soul 135, $34. This one's all black and is also a quite nice cooler. For a motherboard, the great thing about buying AM4 is that there are much cheaper motherboard options. You're probably going to spend around $200 for a motherboard for AM5, or to get a decent LED LGA 1700 board. But for about 140 to 150 bucks, there are quite a few options for the AM4 platform. Do note that this platform is end of life. There are no new CPUs launching for it. So beyond the 5800X3D, you have the 5950X3D maybe that has more cores, but the 5800X3D is really the best gaming CPU on this platform. But the trade-off is savings, so you've got the Asus Prime B550 Plus right here for 140, MSI's B550-A Pro. I've chosen these boards because they include some higher end features like a USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel connector, and they all have good enough power delivery for even the higher end Ryzen 5000 series CPUs. And then here's the board that I'm actually planning to build with, which is the GIGABYTE B550 Gaming XV2. This one's also a $150 board, sold out on Newegg right now, but you can find it on a few other retailers. For memory, you can get by with a 16 gig kit. However, I think this would be cutting yourself a little bit short for this caliber of build. I'd say spend another $30 to $35 and get yourself a 32 gig kit. Here's a G-Skill Ripjaws 5 kit that's rated for 3600 speed, and it is CAS latency 18. You can get some very speedy 3600 speed DDR4 kits that are CL16, but you have to spend about $20 more on that, so it's not quite worth the premium in my personal opinion for a gaming system. For a case, again, you can get by with about a $70 case. However, my intent is to actually build in the NZXT H510 Flow, matte white. But apart from this being a reasonably priced case with good airflow, part of the reason I got it was it has that USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port up front. But cases are very flexible, and as long as you're getting a full-size ATX case that can fit the components and has clearance enough for the cooler, and that appeals to you with whatever design aesthetic it's going with, you can totally swap out the case in this build. You will need some storage. The really nice thing about PC components right now is the NVMe storage. Prices for 1 terabyte drives are down to about $50 for a decent starter one. I recommended the Kingston NV2 quite a few times. We've also got the Team Group MP33 down here for about $1 less, but pick your poison. And then there's a power supply. I've opted for a 750 watt power supply because the graphics cards I'm potentially pairing with this build are a little bit higher end. Fortunately, a 750 watt power supply should be able to handle any of the graphics cards I'm showing you guys today. But PSU prices are a little bit higher than they have been historically, so you're going to need to spend about $70 to $80 for a 750 watt 80 plus bronze unit. This one is partially modular, which is nice, and it has all flat black cables. Another power supply option, the Silverstone Essential ET750-B, about $80 for this one. It is not partially modular, but it has, again, all flat black ribbon style cables, which I find nice for cable management as well as looks. And Silverstone, of course, is one of those reputable power supply companies that makes power supplies that don't suck. Incidentally, I was picking up components for the actual build, and I scooped up a Cooler Master Masterwatt 750 watt unit for about that same price, about $75. That was a couple weeks ago, and the price is not the same anymore, but I have linked it in the description as well. So that covers all the components again, except for the graphics card, and we're coming in at just shy of $800 so far. Here are the current lowest prices for each of these GPUs that you can actually just buy as of the beginning of March 2023, over on the NVIDIA side on the left and the AMD Radeon side on the right. If you're looking around the $350 price range, you can get an RTX 3060 12 gig on the AMD side, and you can get an RX 6700 XT 12 gig over on the AMD side. Note that all of the AMD cards, as compared by price to the NVIDIA alternatives, have notably better performance in terms of raw frame rates versus NVIDIA. NVIDIA has a bit of a price premium for their cards. They've built up that reputation over a long period of time, so I don't blame anyone who wants to go with an NVIDIA graphics card. Just note that unless you're taking advantage of the NVIDIA specific features like DLSS, or unless you're playing a game that specifically favors NVIDIA graphics cards, you're probably going to be better off going with an AMD Radeon card, simply because you're going to get anywhere from 5 to 20% more frames out of that card, again, depending on the settings you're playing with and what game you're playing with, but ballpark. So okay, the 6700 XT for $360, actually a very nice price for that card, down in this range. We also have the 6750 XT 12 gig for only about $50 more at $410, and that one's going up against the RTX 3060 Ti 8 gig, and incidentally, this is probably the NVIDIA card that I would recommend right now for about $420-ish. These were down to $400 last month. Prices crept up just a little bit, which kind of sucks, but this is still kind of the bang for your buck option on the NVIDIA side, or the 3070 8 gig. The price on this one has been trickling down very, very slowly, and you should note that the MSRP for the 3070 8 gig is $500, but $540 for a reasonably built add-in board partner model isn't too bad. Beyond that, you have the 3070 Ti 8 gig, which is about $630 right now. Again, pretty steep, but not too much more than the MSRP. And then you have the 4070 Ti 12 gig, and that's the next generation of cards. Those are currently going for about 800 bucks at the cheapest, but I found one for 820 that you could actually add to cart. On the AMD side, once you get past the 6700 XT and 6750 XT, things escalate fairly quickly. For 485, you got the 6800 16 gig. For 560, you got the 6800 XT 16 gig. For 650, you got the 6900 XT 16 gig, just 50 bucks more for a 6950 XT 16 gig. Or then again, if you go up to the $800 range, you get to the current generation parts, the stuff that just launched in the past few months. And there you have a 7900 XT 20 gig for $800. So if we just drop in the RTX 3060 Ti 8 gig there for $420, you can see our total, which is what I sort of started off with, at about $1,210. But like I said, just about any of these graphics cards can be dropped into this system, and even for the higher end ones, you wouldn't even necessarily need to change the power supply. So if you go Team Red, you can get yourself a little bit more raw performance in terms of frame rates and even drop the price by 10 bucks. A 6800 16 gig brings the price up to $1,275. If we went for an RTX 3070 8 gig for $540, our price becomes $1,330, and we're spending about 40% of this price on the GPU. So I'm not going to plug in each and every one of these numbers, but you're typically going to see about a $100 price difference between the different tiers of GPUs. So when it's less than that, like going from the 3070 to the 3070 Ti, for example, it might seem a little bit more tantalizing. And it climbs and climbs until you get up to something like the 4070 Ti 12 gig, where now you're spending more than half of the budget for the system on just the graphics card. But again, the nice thing about this build with the 5800X3D is you have that kind of base price of around $800 for the components without the GPU, and then you can decide how much you have left over for that key component of dropping the graphics card into the system as well. But there you have it, guys. For anyone who is not going to be spending $2,000 plus on a new gaming PC right now, this is absolutely what I would recommend them in terms of bang for the buck, and a price that's around the $1,200 to maybe $1,400 range, depending on what graphics card you go with. Again, all the parts I talked about today are linked in the video's description, so be sure to check that out. While you're down there, you can hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. You can subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos like this coming at you really soon. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.